What is the most tragic announcement that was made at your high school? I know mass disasters are the most common answer, but for me the most horrible form of announcement happened in class unintentionally. The teacher hadn't arrived yet, and everyone was seated but chatting. I heard a group to my left talking about a boy at a nearby school who had ended it the night before. A blonde boy, 2 years younger. From their description this boy was similar looking to my cousin. They started talking about his sister, our age, and I remember the most horrible sensation like a rising sickness, creeping all over me. They shared the gory details in hushed whispers, horrified, yet loving the macabre darkness of it all. How he'd waited till he was alone, and done it in the garage. What he looked like, when they found him. I felt my heart, beating so hard that I felt sick. So sick I wanted to vomit on my desk, but I couldn't move. All I could do was listen. The girl in front of me suddenly turned around and I still remember her face, white as a ghost. She said my name, and then, no. Oh no. The group gossiping said my cousin's name just as the teacher entered. I felt like a ghost, suspended in that horrible second where I heard his name and I couldn't pretend. My mind didn't work. The girl in front of me kept turning to ask if I was okay, but I couldn't look at her. The teacher hated me, and I couldn't ask to leave, because I couldn't explain. For 40 minutes I sat there, and everyone's voices felt like they were in a wind tunnel. All I could really hear was my breathing, hard and fast. Dead, dead, dead. I was stuck. The moment class ended, I bolted, leaving books and my bag, walking straight to the office. There wasn't any air. It felt like I was crossing a desert. The school was deserted. Everyone was in class. It made the moment more surreal, like being inside a dream. My dad was home that day, and all I could think was that I needed to reach my dad. The world had shrunk to a single mission. I'm guessing I must have been in complete shock. Please ring my dad. I need to go home, I told the office staff through the window. They kept talking to me, but I couldn't understand their words. Please ring my dad. I need to go home. I said these words over and over. Finally, one asked if I was sick. I felt sick with the relief that I now had an excuse. Yes, I am sick. I went and sat in a chair, no longer able to stand. The office ladies asked how I was sick, and what was wrong, but I was unable to tell them. I was caught, unable to explain, but unable to leave, and in my mind, all the time, he was swinging. Luckily, at this point my year coordinator came running in. Turned out the girl in my class had run straight to his office to tell him what happened. He made the office ladies ring my dad, and held my hand while I waited. I remember that he had tears in his eyes. I was always so grateful that he was there, as a buffer, but I couldn't speak because I couldn't understand his words. I remember that his voice kept breaking. I'd never heard him sound anything but confident. I kept thinking about the rope, swinging, about how we'd spent so many years there, playing, and he went there to die. Our house was so close, but he did that. The office was so still. The office ladies were staring at me as if I was the one now dying. I remember clenching my hands in the gray of my skirt, how my head felt like there was no blood in it. I thought about my other cousin, her parents, and then I couldn't think about them, because he was dead. And I was sitting there, just waiting. We didn't live far from school, so my dad arrived soon. There were no words for the relief of seeing his gentle face. He asked if I was sick, and I simply told him I had to go home. Everyone was silent, watching us leave. I got in the car. Instead of starting the vehicle, my dad turned to me and said, "Please tell me what's wrong." And in that moment, I suddenly realized, I was going to have to tell him about my cousin's death. In this entire window of time, this thought had not occurred to me. And the thought of saying it, out loud, of destroying another person like I had been destroyed, felt so much worse than learning the truth. I wanted to get out of the car, but there was nowhere else to go. I had nowhere to run, and I couldn't move anyway. And then I realized that it wouldn't end, that we would have to tell my brother, who was homesick, and then my mother, and I did not want to do it. I did not want to start that chain, so I sat there, frozen and lost, surrounded by a death that was still a secret. I remember my dad's worry turning to a different kind of alarm, lacing his words as I finally met his gaze. I looked away, staring at the plants surrounding the school, and jumped. I yelled it, like a scream that became a sob, and for the first time in my life, I saw my father's heart break. He made a noise I will never forget, and then he began to sob. I had never seen him cry before. We sat there in the car park, sobbing, until students walked by and stared at us. I felt like we belonged to another world, because they looked so alien, so calm. I grabbed my dad's arm and said, "Please, please, Dad. Take me home."